The DNA results arrived on the morning of my ex-wife's wedding. I wasn't there. I was sitting alone at a small round table near the window of a quiet hotel room on the edge of town watching steam rise from a paper cup of coffee that had already gone cold. The room smelled of industrial cleaner and stale air conditioning. Outside, the sky was a flat, indifferent gray. My phone lit up face down on the laminate tabletop. It vibrated against the wood like something alive, something impatient, something that demanded to be heard. I didn't answer it. Not yet. I just watched it dance. I already knew what the call would sound like. I knew exactly who was on the other end, and I knew exactly what tone they would be using. It would be panic dressed up as politeness. It would be terror pretending to be control. 3 weeks earlier, I had smiled and signed the divorce papers. They had paid me $3 million to disappear, to erase myself from the narrative. And everyone in that room, her parents, her fiancé, the lawyers, believed the story was over. They believed they had bought their silence. They were wrong. The night it all began remains etched in my memory with the clarity of a high-definition photograph. My wife, Laura, stood in our kitchen. She kissed my forehead the way she always did when she wanted to appear gentle without committing to actual closeness. Her lips were cool. Her perfume, a scent of jasmine and expensive musk, hung in the air between us, masking the smell of the dinner I had just cooked. "We are going to be fine, babe," she said softly. Her hand lingered on my shoulder for a fraction of a second too long, a performance of affection. The dishwasher hummed behind her, a rhythmic swishing sound that usually signaled the end of a normal day. The kitchen lights were too bright for that hour, bouncing off the marble countertops we had picked out together 3 years ago. I remember looking at the veins in the stone and thinking how permanent they looked compared to us. I nodded because nodding was easier than asking questions I already knew the answers to. I nodded because if I spoke, I might shatter the fragile glass house we were living in before I was ready to leave. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was her mother. "Ethan," she said. Her voice was too cheerful, too bright. It was the tone people use when they are about to negotiate something ugly but want to pretend it is a social call. "Can you come by the house? We need to talk. Tonight." Laura didn't ask who it was. She didn't look up from her phone. She already knew. She just reached for her coat, her movements efficient and rehearsed. That was when I understood this wasn't a conversation. It was a script, and I had just missed the rehearsal. Her parents' house sat at the end of a quiet, manicured cul-de-sac where the lawns were cut with laser precision, and the neighbors waved without ever really looking at you. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lemon polish and old money. Her father sat rigid on the couch, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. Her mother stood by the fireplace, adjusting a vase of flowers that didn't need adjusting. And beside them, as if summoned from central casting, was a man in a charcoal gray suit. I recognized him immediately. Mr. Halpern, the family attorney, the fixer. The man they called when a DUI needed to become a parking ticket or a zoning law needed to bend. "Let us be practical," her mother said before I had even fully sat down. An envelope slid across the polished mahogany table toward me. It was thick, cream-colored, heavy. I reached out and opened it. Inside was a single page with a number printed so neatly it almost felt polite. $3 million, her mother continued as if she were explaining the warranty on a toaster. "For you to sign the divorce papers tonight, uncontested, and move on with your life." Laura stood near the window, her back to me. She was staring out at the dark street, watching the moths batter themselves against the porch light. She looked like she was waiting for a rescue that had already arrived but wasn't what she wanted. I didn't ask why. I didn't ask how long. I didn't ask who. Because betrayal rarely arrives all at once like a tsunami. It comes in fragments. A password changed here, a late meeting there, a phone placed face down on the table, a look that passes through you instead of landing on you. I looked at the check. Then I looked at Halpern. "What about the other part?" I asked calmly. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, detached, remote. Her mother tilted her head, confused. "Other part?" "The truth," I said. The reason you are paying a premium for speed. Silence. The kind of silence that hums louder than conversation. The grandfather clock in the hall ticked. The sound was deafening. Her father cleared his throat. "This is best for everyone, Ethan. We just want a clean break." I looked at Laura again. She still didn't look back. That was the moment something inside me went quiet. Not broken, just quiet. Like a room after all the furniture has been removed and the echoes stop. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Congratulations," I said. Her mother frowned. "Excuse me." "On the new chapter," I replied, keeping my eyes on Laura's back. "The baby, the wedding, the life you were so careful not to include me in." Laura finally turned. Her face tightened. Not with guilt, not with shame, but with irritation. As if I was making this harder than necessary by noticing the obvious. As if my awareness was a breach of etiquette. Mr. Halpern stepped in smoothly. He slid a thick folder toward me, covering the check. "Divorce papers, an NDA, a confidentiality clause wide enough to silence a lifetime. It covers everything, Ethan. Past, present, and future. Sign here," he said, offering a heavy gold pen. "The funds will be transferred immediately. Tonight." I picked up the pen. I felt the weight of it in my hand. I paused. "I want this notarized," I said. "Filed at the courthouse. And the wire transfer needs to be in my name and cleared before I leave this house." Her mother smiled, relieved. She let out a breath she had been holding. She thought she had won. She thought I was just greedy. "Of course," she said. "Whatever you need." They thought I was focused on the money. They thought I was securing my financial future. They didn't understand that money leaves footprints, and footprints tell stories. They didn't realize I wasn't building a nest egg. I was building an evidence trail. At the courthouse the next morning, I signed without shaking. Laura's hand trembled so badly she dropped the pen twice. Her mother signed as a witness like she was closing a commercial real estate deal. The money hit my account before I left the building. I saved the receipt. I screenshotted the transfer confirmation. I forwarded the emails to a secure server. Cloud backup. Physical hard drive, 3 places, habit not fear. This is the power of documentation. Always keep receipts, even when you think you won't need them, especially then. When I got home that night, my home for the last time, I packed slowly. I didn't throw things, I didn't weep over photographs. I moved with the precision of a man dismantling a bomb. At the bottom of a drawer beneath old insurance documents and expired passports, I found a thin medical file. It was mine from years ago. A consult after a minor procedure Laura rarely remembered and never asked about. I opened it and read the doctor's notes one last time. Low probability of conception, motility issues, possible but statistically unlikely without intervention. I sat on the edge of the bed, the room smelling faintly of laundry detergent and something else I couldn't name. Maybe the scent of endings. My phone buzzed. A text from Laura. "I hope you are okay." I didn't respond. I didn't feel the urge to. Instead, I stared at the file in my hands and felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not rage, not grief. Focus. Cold, sharp focus. Because if she was pregnant, and she was, then someone was lying. She claimed it was Greg, her new fiancé. The family claimed it was a miracle, but I held the math in my hands. And I had just been paid $3 million to leave the room before the truth arrived. I didn't leave town because I was running. I left because distance makes patterns visible. 2 days after the courthouse, I checked into a hotel just off the interstate. It was anonymous, bland, perfect. I opened my laptop and began doing what I had always done best, organizing information. Divorce filing, confirmed. Wire transfer, confirmed. NDA, highlighted and analyzed. The confidentiality clause was aggressive, too aggressive. It barred me from discussing any matter pertaining to the marriage, its dissolution, or any related personal, medical, or professional circumstances. It specifically mentioned medical history regarding progeny. That kind of language wasn't written to protect feelings. It was written to protect reputations. It was written to hide a biological fact. This is coercive control in legal form. I forwarded the documents to Marcy, a paralegal I had known since college. She was the best researcher I knew. She called within minutes. They rushed you, she said. No greeting, just facts. That is not how amicable divorces look. That is how hostage negotiations look. They wanted it done fast, I replied, looking out at the highway traffic. People only rush when they are afraid of something showing up late. What are they afraid of, Ethan? She asked. Biology, I said. The next morning my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar email address. No greeting, just an automated header. Prenatal paternity test appointment confirmation. I read it twice. Date scheduled, Wednesday. Estimated results, Friday 10 o'clock a.m. I wasn't listed as the patient or the father. But my old email, one Laura and I had once shared for insurance purposes 5 years ago, was still attached as an outdated emergency contact in the medical system. They were in such a hurry to book the test they hadn't scrubbed the contact data. I forwarded the email to Marcy without comment. Her response came back in all caps. Do not contact anyone. Save everything. On social media, Laura's family was anything but subtle. They were in full PR mode. Photos of flower samples, venue walkthroughs. A caption on her mother is Facebook that read, "New beginnings are beautiful things." I didn't feel jealous. I felt replaced. I felt like a prop that had been discarded once the scene was over. That evening, another message came in. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Unknown. You should know they are pushing the DNA results before the wedding on purpose. I stared at the screen. My heart rate spiked. Me, who is this? Unknown. Someone who doesn't like being told what to forget. On Thursday, Marcy called again. Her voice was tight. They are laying groundwork, she said. The NDA plus the money plus the speed, that is not closure, that is containment. They are building a wall around something. Can they undo it? I asked. The agreement. If there is coercion, she said, or if material facts were hidden, especially medical ones, if you can prove they lied to get you to sign. The NDA is paper mache. I thought of the file in my bag, the consult, the probabilities. I have something, I said. Friday morning arrived quietly, too quietly. The air in the hotel room felt thin. At 9:58 a.m. my hands were steady. I watched the clock on the wall tick, tick, tick. At 10:01 the phone vibrated once, then again. I didn't pick it up. At 10:02 it rang. This time I answered. Ethan, her mother said. She sounded breathless, but she was trying to sound composed. Trying to maintain the veneer of the matriarch. Are you somewhere private? Yes, I am. There has been a complication, my mother-in-law said carefully, choosing her words like she was walking through a minefield. The results. They do not say what we expected. Behind her voice I could hear movement, chaotic movement, shoes clicking frantically on tile, a door opening and closing too hard, someone crying in the distance, a raw, ugly sound. I see, I said. Did you know about the test? She asked, suspicion creeping into her tone. You were in such a hurry, I said evenly. I assumed you would handle the details. A new voice cut in sharply. Greg, Laura's boss, the groom-to-be, the man who thought he had won the prize. The lab screwed up, he shouted. He was close to the phone, loud enough to distort the audio. That is what they do sometimes. Tests fail. It is a false negative. They do not fail like this, I replied. How would you know? He snapped. What do you know about it? Because I wasn't the father, and neither were you, but I didn't say it. I let the silence hang there, heavy and suffocating. If you think it is wrong, run it again, I said. A sharp sound followed. Something knocked over. Glass shattering, maybe. Then Laura's voice cracking, breaking through the noise. It is not wrong, she whispered. The line went dead. Marcy called 10 minutes later. They got the results, she said, and it blew up. My source at the clinic said there was shouting. Good, I said. That means they are scared. They are not done, she warned. They are just switching tactics. Panic makes people dangerous, Ethan. Watch your back. If you are hooked on how deep this conspiracy goes, hit the subscribe button. We analyze high-stakes drama and human behavior here on Story Sparks. Monday came with rain. a gray, relentless drizzle that coated the world in slick darkness. I sat at a small cafe near the pier. At 7:43 a.m. an email appeared from unknown sender at Secure Mail. Subject: You deserve the full truth. The body contained only one line. The father isn't a stranger. It is someone who has been in the room the whole time. My stomach tightened, not in shock but in recognition, like hearing a word you already knew but hadn't dared to say out loud. A second message followed seconds later. If you want proof, meet me tomorrow. 7 o'clock a.m. alone. I have the audio. I arrived back in town the night before the wedding. Not because I wanted to see them, but because I wanted to be close enough to hear the truth when it finally broke. I checked into a hotel down the street from the courthouse. At 9:58 a.m. the morning of the wedding, my phone lit up again. At 10:02 it rang. Laura is mother. Ethan, she said too quietly. Thank God you are reachable. I always am. You need to understand, she said, lowering her voice. This situation has escalated. The DNA results came back. I know. You knew. You scheduled the test. I assumed you would get the results. Did you know they wouldn't match Greg? I closed my eyes. I knew enough not to be surprised. Greg's voice burst through the line, sharp and desperate. This is insane. They said the twins weren't mine. We are getting married in 4 hours. That is impossible. Laura interrupted, her voice high and thin with hysteria. Greg, I said calmly, if the test says they are not yours, then yelling won't change that. You do not get to lecture me, he shouted. This is your mess. You are the ex-husband. No, I corrected. This is your rush. You wanted me gone so you could play happy family. Now you have to deal with the reality of it. A new voice entered the call, measured, authoritative, smooth as polished glass. Mr. Halpern. Mr. Walker, the man said. This is Halpern. I think we need to reset the tone here. Everyone is emotional. This isn't productive. You scheduled a prenatal DNA test days before a wedding, I replied. I would say emotion is the least of your problems. That test was necessary. There were questions. Questions you were afraid to ask too late, I said. This can still be handled discreetly, Halpern said. We prefer to keep your name out of whatever comes next. We can increase the settlement. I smiled without humor. You paid me to disappear. That was your discretion. You bought my absence, not my complicity. What do you want? Her mother asked, voice shaking. More money, is that it? I want you to stop calling, I said evenly. That is it, Greg snapped. You walk away while we clean up your mess. Greg, I said quietly, if you think this ends with me, you haven't read the room. Laura's voice rose suddenly, wild and uncontrolled. I didn't do this alone. The line went dead silent. Then a sound cut through. A scream. Not Laura is. A man is. The kind of scream adults make when they realize the ground has disappeared beneath them. Ethan, Halpern said, lowering his voice. The smooth veneer was cracking. This call didn't happen. You should hang up, I replied. You are not thinking clearly. The line went dead. My phone buzzed again. A text. Unknown, it is worse than you think. The father isn't Greg and it isn't random. I typed one word, who, 3 dots appeared. Another email arrived. Subject. You deserve to know who the father is. I leaned back in my chair. Truth requires attention. The diner sat just off Route 9. Inside, the smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee hung heavy in the air. It was 6:58 a.m. At 7:03, a man slid into the seat across from me. Baseball cap pulled low, mask covering half his face. He looked terrified. His hands were shaking as he reached for the sugar dispenser, then pulled back. I cannot stay long, he said quietly. I shouldn't even be here if he knew I was here. Then why are you? I asked. Because I haven't slept since Friday, because what he is doing, it is not just legal work. It is playing God. He placed his phone on the table face down and pushed it toward me with 2 fingers. They told us it was urgent, he continued. Special handling, confidential, no paper trail beyond the minimum. I thought it was just rich people being rich, and then I asked, and then I realized who was calling the shots. Who? He hesitated. He looked around the empty diner. Halpern. The name landed exactly where I expected it to. He came in himself, the man went on. Didn't send an assistant. He stood there and smiled and told us this had to be done before the wedding. Said the family couldn't afford uncertainty. Said mistakes would be unfortunate. What kind of mistakes? The kind that get blamed on someone lower down. I recorded it because I needed insurance. I needed to prove I wasn't the one manipulating the data. I pressed play. Halpern's voice filled the space between us. Calm, cultured, chilling. You understand this needs to be settled before the ceremony, he said in the recording. There is too much at stake to let timing interfere. A woman's voice followed, strained. Frightened Laura, but the results, if they come back wrong, if they don't match Greg. They won't, Halpern replied smoothly. And if they do not, we will know how to interpret them. But he is not the father, Laura whispered. Greg isn't the father. Do not be naive, Laura, Halpern said. His voice dropped an octave. It was intimate, possessive. The father is me, and you are not going to destroy a family over biology. We will fix the paper trail. Greg will never know. My chest went cold, the audio ended. So it wasn't just an affair, I said quietly. It was a plan, the man said. He groomed the situation. He pushed for the divorce. He pushed for the rush. He wanted Greg to raise his kids so he could keep his reputation and his career. I saved the file to my phone, then sent it to Marcy with one word: audio. Her response came back before I could lock the screen. Do not confront anyone. Come straight to me now. The final meeting didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened in a glass-walled conference room overlooking a parking lot. Marcy sat beside me. Across the table were Laura's parents, stiff and pale. Laura sat with her head down, staring at her hands. And Halpern sat at the head, still composed but no longer untouchable. We are here to resolve this, Halpern began, his tone practiced. We need to update the terms of the NDA. Marcy didn't respond. She slid a folder to the center of the table and opened it to a single page. The transcript of the audio. Halpern's eyes moved across the words. He stopped. His jaw tightened once. He closed the folder himself. This won't end well, he said quietly. I met his gaze. Truth rarely does for the people who rely on silence. Laura's mother leaned forward, hands clasped too tightly. What do you want? I do not want more money, I said. I do not want a public apology, and I do not want to negotiate my dignity. Then why are we here? Her father scoffed weakly. 3 things, I said, lifting 3 fingers. First, you retract every statement, formal or informal, that painted me as opportunistic, vindictive, or bought. I will not be recast as the villain to protect your image. Laura swallowed. She nodded faintly. Second, what is mine comes back to me. Assets I contributed to, accounts I built. No NDAs that imply guilt where there was none. Halpern shifted in his chair. He knew the legal implications of coercion. And third, I continued, you handle the consequences of this fully and honestly for the children. Not behind closed doors, not with scapegoats, with responsibility. Greg needs to know, the firm needs to know. Laura's mother shook her head, voice breaking. You cannot expect us to. I can, I interrupted gently. Because if you do not, the next version of this conversation won't be private. I will file a motion to vacate the divorce settlement based on fraud and coercion. And this recording will be Exhibit A. The room went still. Halpern leaned back, eyes narrowed, calculating exits. He realized there were none. You would expose everything. I would expose the truth, I said. There is a difference. Laura finally spoke. I didn't think it would go this far. I looked at her for a long moment. It always does, I said, when people keep choosing the easy lie. The agreement that followed was meticulous. The NDA, rewritten to protect privacy, not reputations built on manipulation. Halpern signed last, his pen pressing harder than necessary. He resigned from his firm the next day, citing health reasons. The wedding was canceled. Greg left town. When it was over, I stood, gathered my coat, and turned to Laura. She opened her mouth as if to say something, an apology maybe. I shook my head once, not cruelly, just clearly. You do not need to say anything, I told her. You already did when you let them speak for you. Outside, the air was cool and clean. It had rained recently, and the pavement reflected the sky like a second chance. I walked to my car and sat there for a minute, hands on the wheel, breathing. Some endings do not need fireworks. They need air. If you had been in my place, would you have signed and walked away, or would you have fought from the very first minute? Tell me in the comments where you are listening from. I read them. I really do. And if stories like this, quiet justice, hard truths, and endings that let you breathe, matter to you, consider subscribing. We share them every day, and your presence means more than you know. Let us keep walking this road together. Thanks for watching.